Descendents, 9th Walnut, album review. Let's chat about it. Hey guys, what's going on? John here from What's Spinning here tonight to chat about the latest album from legendary California-based band Descendents. Now, this is a band that's always meant quite a bit to me, mostly because Descendents' Milo Goes to College, their legendary debut album, really eased me in nicely to the early days of hardcore punk and pop punk and punk rock. I mean, this album is absolutely required listening for any punk rock fan. Now, ever since, it's been a little bit of a wild ride for me in my Descendents fandom. I Don't Want to Grow Up is kind of fun. I mean, Pervert's a fun track. But by the time Enjoy came around, I wasn't even listening to Descendents anymore. It's just not really for me, and All wasn't that good either, in my opinion. It was a fine punk rock album, but for me, what made Milo Goes to College so great was the band's overwhelming personality. For me, though, I always felt like 1996's Everything Sucks was a really great return to form. It was catchy, it was angsty, and while the band was a little bit older, I got a lot of the same feelings as I did on Milo Goes to College. And 2004's Cool to Be You was fine. Totally viable Descendents album. I mean, Blast Off, Maddie, the title track, great tracks. And if I'm being honest, while not nearly as good, I would still rather listen to like half of Hypercaphium Spazzinate than anything on All. Now, this leads us to this latest album, 9th Walnut. This is an interesting album for a lot of reasons. I mean, from a distance, this album had my mouth watering. Most of the material on here was written between 1977 and 1980. It also features the band's classic lineup. This album was recorded for the most part in 2002. And now, here we are with it. This album starts off with Sailor's Choice, and for what it's worth, it's a solid intro, actually. It's really good. I love how triumphant it is. It's explosive. Milo sounds great on vocals. I mean, when Descendents really get into their groove, they really just make some of the most catchy and instantaneous punk tracks of all time. And this is no different. It really sticks with you. Nightage, best track here. This track is awesome. When I hear this track, and when I think that this was recorded in 2002 and wrote between 77 and 80, yeah, that all comes through to fruition. I feel like this has the rawness of their best material. This sounds like it could have been plopped onto any of their classic albums. I freaking love the power behind this gigantic hook, and honestly, in a sea of tracks that don't go past a minute, I'm so glad that this one is the one that goes over too. It's so catchy, it's so aggressive, the performances all around are fantastic. Yes, please. I really love Baby Don't You Know as well. I have since it dropped. It's short, it's sweet, it's aggressive, it's just memorable enough. This is really where I expected to hear them. It also has that youthful energy to it. Tired of Being Tired really takes me back. I love the thunderous bass riff. I love the intense vocals here. Also, these group vocals, nice freaking touch. So much of these recordings are just so tasteful to the name of Descendants. In a lot of ways, 9th Walnut is what we deserve from the classic lineup. I'm Shaky is also one of the more smooth tunes here. It's got an inviting riff, and so much of this just reminds me of what brought me to Descendants music to begin with. It's full of nerdy lines and lovelorn lyrics. So catchy, it's so likable, and I'm not shocked that this was wrote so long ago in a good way. It just has that authenticity to it. There are tracks here, though, that sadly bring me down a peg. Like You Make Me Sick, for example. This is the worst track here. This is rough to listen to. Songwriting, this is some of the worst I've ever heard from the boys. Lullaby also does not work for me. I think there's a good song in here somewhere, but this production just sounds rough around the edges, not in a classic punk way either. Grudge, on the other hand, is ultra one note, and I don't know why. It sucks because this is one of the hardest hitting tracks here. This one has some teeth to it, but it's so one-dimensional. It's lacking that classic personality. Mohicans isn't that much better. This is a little bit too much pop for my pop punk. Just not really liking a lot here. And the rest of this album is pretty middle of the road, even though I will say this. For a late career album from Descendents with their classic album lineup, is certainly worth listening to. It's probably better than it should be. Creep Sudette is middle of the road. It's super catchy, but it also seems way outside of their comfort zone, like the Dave Clark 5 cover that we get later on. It will stick with you, but it doesn't have a lot of teeth to it and doesn't have that personality. Like the Way I Know, though, is pretty damn good. It's gritty, it has some bite to it, but as far as the shorter track goes, it actually gets its point across. It seems like a complete thought. Wish I could say the same for It's a Hectic World, not at all. This, on the other hand, just sounds like a track written in the band's infancy. It just doesn't seem to have the, complete package of Milo Goes to College or something. On the other hand, To Remember hits me right in the feels. In every way, this sounds like it would have landed nicely on the later moments of Milo Goes to College. It's the perfect blend of Descendents formula. It's catchy, it's got that big hook, it's emotional in points, it's Descendents. And I love the unapologetic nastiness of You're Disgusting. It's My Hair, on the other hand, is a really weird one. This doesn't sound like it was recorded in the same cycle at all. It doesn't even sound like it was written around the same time. This is awkward. It just sounds really old and tired, all around odd. Truthfully, I Need Some is one of the best tracks here. It's catchy, it's got personality, it's got the lovelorn lyrics. This sounds like a Descendents tune, and that's not a slight. It actually could have been a lot worse. Ride the Wild, on the other hand, is easily one of my favorite tracks here. This is the complete package. It's upbeat, it's super catchy, it has the sort of nerdiness of early Descendents. It's got the heartbroken lyrics, it's got the complete package. What more can you ask for? And then I hear Glad All Over, this Dave Clark 5 cover, and it's kind of everything that I didn't want to hear here. I like the idea of Descendents covering these old school rock tracks. I think they could really, record quite a few and I'd love them. It's just really cheesy and I feel like their hearts aren't that into it. So, you know what? This is really fascinating album from Descendents. The last with their classic lineup. And for the most part, I think it's worth a listen. I mean, so many tracks on here have the rawness, have that early Descendents feel to it, even though they were recorded in 2002. That alone is worth a listen. I mean, there are some tracks that are not as thought out, and there are some tracks that you can kind of tell that the band was amateurish when they wrote them, but still, this is still better than it should be. While it's not perfect, it's certainly worth a listen. I'm building a light 7 on this Descendents album, but let me know what you guys think down below. If you like this video, be sure to give us a like, give us a subscribe, and let me know down below what you would like for me to chat about in the future. And until next time, have a great day, guys.